In the deepest part of the sea stood the palace of the Sea King. And he had 6 daughters. They played in the garden all day long. Unlike the other princesses, the youngest was quiet and brooding. And her name was the Little Mermaid. Most of all, she loved listening to stories about the world of people. Traditionally, a mermaid could only rise to the surface for the first time in her 16th birthday. And now it's time to see the land and the youngest princess. She surfaced close to the ship, singing and music coming from the deck. This was the first time the princess saw the ship. In the cabin of the ship, the Little Mermaid noticed a handsome prince. For a long time she could not take her eyes off him. Suddenly, a violent storm began at sea. The prince's ship hit a rock and shattered into pieces. In complete darkness, lightning flashed, and the Little Mermaid saw the prince fall into the sea. She rescued him by bringing him ashore. Soon the prince was found by a girl passing by. When he woke up, he smiled at her and thanked her for saving her. The Little Mermaid became sad that the prince did not even know about her existence. She dived into the water and swam away. From her father's stories about people, the Little Mermaid knew that they considered the fishtail of mermaids to be ugly. Therefore, in order to please a person, one had to acquire 2 legs. The next day, the Little Mermaid went to the sea witch. The sorceress agreed to make a potion for her that would turn the fishtail into a pair of slender legs. The princess's gait would be graceful, but every step she took would bring unbearable pain. And if the prince married another, the Little Mermaid would turn into sea foam. In return, the witch wished to take her wonderful voice from the girl. The princess was ready for anything to be close to the prince, and she agreed. Having sailed to the prince's palace at night, the Little Mermaid drank a magic drink. A sharp pain shot through her and she passed out. Waking up in the afternoon, the girl saw the prince in front of her, and lowering her eyes, found 2 legs instead of a fishtail. The prince tried to find out who she was and how she got here, but the Little Mermaid could not speak. Despite her airy gait and beautiful dancing, she felt terrible pain in her legs. The prince became more and more attached to the Little Mermaid, but still treated her like a cute little child. It never entered his head to make her his wife. Once the prince admitted that his heart is occupied by the one who saved him long ago on the shore, and they are going to get married. The Little Mermaid was very upset, but could not tell him the truth. When it was time for the wedding, the prince invited the Little Mermaid to go with the newlyweds on a honeymoon trip. A luxurious honeymoon tent is spread out on the deck of the ship. The Little Mermaid had one last evening left to be with the one for whom she left her home, gave her wonderful voice and endured endless torment every day. But he didn't even notice them. When silence fell on the ship, the Little Mermaid sat on the deck and waited for the first rays of the sun. Suddenly, near the ship, she noticed her sisters. They tearfully asked the witch to help save the princess from death. The sorceress gave them a sharp knife, with which the Little Mermaid was to pierce the heart of the prince. A drop of his blood would turn her legs into a tail, and she could return to the sea. The Little Mermaid looked into the tent, and saw there a sleeping couple in love. She did not find the strength to take the prince's life, and threw the dagger into the sea. With grief, the Little Mermaid threw herself into the water. But the kindness of the princess melted the heart of the wicked witch. The sorceress cancelled her spell, and the Little Mermaid again had a fishtail instead of human legs.
Lemuel Gulliver was born into the family of a poor English landowner. The boy was the 3rd of 5 sons. At the age of 14, he became an apprentice to a famous London doctor, and then got a job as a surgeon on a ship.
Cool.
For 6 years Gulliver traveled to different countries, observed the customs of the natives, and even studied their language. And so Gulliver set off on another voyage on the ship Antelope. But did not have time to pass even halfway, as the ship fell into a terrible storm. The storm hit the ship against the rocks, and the sailors jumped overboard in horror. And only Gulliver managed to get into the boat. He was carried for hours on the waves, and soon by a miracle the boat washed ashore. But Gulliver was so exhausted by the storm that as soon as he stepped on the ground, he immediately fell asleep on the nearby lawn. The rays of the first sun awakened Gulliver. He tried to get up, but realized that he could not move. His arms, legs, and even his hair were tied to the ground with a net of small ropes. Suddenly something tickled Gulliver's chest. He raised his head and saw a little man the size of a finger. It was the king of the Lilliputians. He gave the order, and then thousands of small arrows, like needles, began to stab Gulliver's body. The prisoner immediately realized that it was better to submit. He showed by signs that he was hungry and thirsty. Then, by order of the king, food was brought to him. More than 100 natives climbed the stairs to Gulliver's mouth, pouring baskets of fruit, bread, and meat on him. When Gulliver ate everything, he was taken to the capital on a specially made platform. The prisoner was placed in a huge temple, chained to his left leg with many miniature chains. It was the largest room in the entire country, but even into it the giant had to walk on all fours. At a meeting of the Lilliputians, the king ordered to provide Gulliver with a staff of 600 servants. They sewed a suit for the prisoner and even a bedding from miniature mattresses. And over time, the king was convinced that the giant is kind and therefore released him. Gulliver traveled a lot around the country, studied the customs and language of the Lilliputians, and even participated in their holidays and parades. Once, while communicating with the king, Gulliver learned that Lilliputia was at war with the empire of Blefuscu, located on a neighboring island. The reason for the contention was that the Lilliputians could not agree with the Blefuscans on how to properly break the eggs. The Lilliputians split them from the sharp end, and the Blefuscans from the blunt. And now rumors reached the king of Lilliput that the enemy had prepared a fleet and was about to attack. Then the emperor asked for help from Gulliver, and he willingly agreed. And so, under cover of night, Gulliver took long ropes and swam to the enemy ships. He tied a rope to each ship and dragged them to the shores of Lilliput. The guards, who were the only ones on the ship, jumped into the sea and started swimming away from the giant. So Gulliver completely disarmed the opponents and received the most honorable title in the kingdom for this. For this, the courtiers disliked Gulliver. They began to weave intrigues against him, and soon the king himself accused the giant of high treason. Rumors spread throughout the kingdom. And Gulliver learned that at the Privy Council, it was decided to execute him. Therefore, that very night, Gulliver made his way to the shore, where he left his broken boat. Having quickly repaired the boat, the giant left the country of the Lilliputians in a hurry, taking with him 6 small live cows, 2 bulls, and the same number of sheep and rams. Gulliver sailed on the ocean for a long time until he noticed an English ship. On it, he safely got home. But, as it turned out, this was just the beginning of Gulliver's adventures.